welcome to Good Game. I'm Bajo.
And I'm Hex.
Hex, some big questions for some big games this week.
That's right, Assassin's Creed is back with Syndicate, and we want to know how Ubisoft is keeping the franchise fresh.
It appears to be broken.
Oh well, at least we have a train now. It's not all bad.
Also this week, Guitar Hero goes live after a long time out of the spotlight. But do we want to come back to it?
And we were finally able to jump into the Halo 5 multiplayer. Is it heroic or horrific?
Oh yeah. But before all that, perhaps the most important question of all, can you name the game for this week?
History is never truly in the past, young man. History is in our blood.
Forget everything you learned playing the old Guitar Hero because Guitar Hero Live is a complete reinvention. For starters, there's this, a brand new controller. The way you play has fundamentally changed thanks to a redesign of these buttons. There are now 6 buttons arranged as 3 black on top of 3 white.
Hex, I think at first glance, this looks like a much easier game because all the buttons are up here and you don't need to do that pinky stretch. But on harder difficulties, I would say this is actually a much more challenging game.
Yeah, and it's because you need to play more chord shapes. Tricky combos of buttons on both layers that just hurt your brain.
Let's do it.
And Hex, it feels more like playing a real guitar than the older games did. Plus, I think this looks great too.
Yeah, it was a huge risk to throw out the old 5-coloured button design, but I do think the game is better for it. Now, the other big obvious change is that cartoony band members are a thing of the past. This first-person footage of being on stage with real musicians, looking out at huge crowds, it looks stunning, doesn't it? And it's so well produced.
Yeah, I was skeptical at first, but I think it really works. When you're playing well, everyone's rocking out and having a good time, but start making a few mistakes, and not only will your bandmates start glaring at you, but the audience will turn on you too. Get off!
Sorry, guys! Yeah, it's a bit of a technical feat to make it this convincing. Plus, I love how seamlessly the band just goes into the next song, maintaining that illusion that you're playing a live concert.
There's a number of different bands you play with through your career, from rockers to hipsters to all-girl pop groups, but they're almost all super cheesy in their performances.
Let's get in there! Hey man, come on! Let's go!
Yeah, it is all very exaggerated, but I almost feel it needs to be because this is all about rock star fantasy. I mean, I just went with it. I confess I put my foot up on the coffee table at least once, maybe twice.
Well, let's talk about the actual songs they've included with this career. There's about 42 songs overall, but I found it to be a bit of a disappointing collection. It's mainly very mainstream pop rock, a bit of folk, a bit of emo. I just don't think they're songs that show off any amazing guitar playing. I can't remember a single Whitley solo.
Oh, there were 1 or 2 solos. I know what you mean, but I think it's a pretty good mix of genres. And most importantly, all these parts were fun to play. I mean, does Guitar Hero have to be all about big metal riffs and screeching guitar solos to be enjoyable?
Yes, it does.
Well, personally, I think the appeal of guitar playing goes beyond heavy rock, but I guess personal taste comes into a game like this. Anyway, there are plenty more songs, including hard-rocking guitar solos in the game's other mode of play, called Guitar Hero TV. This is an on-demand streaming service of hundreds of songs presented a bit like an MTV channel.
Yes, and the music here is so much better. There are always 2 channels of songs being broadcast that you can jump in and play along with at any time entirely for free. While you're playing, you can see how you're faring against other players doing the same track, and that adds a subtle competitive element to it. I love having the original music videos, Hex.
Yeah, it's so hard to put this down, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think it's got it all over the career mode, as goofy fun as that might be. Part of the appeal is that you're leveling up and gaining unlocks and rewards after every song. And when the video ends, you think, okay, I'll give it a rest now. And then that next song starts playing and you think, well, I'll give it a shot. Oh, it's Rush!
And I like the lottery of not knowing what song's coming up next. It's like watching Rage, but with the fun of getting to play all the guitar parts.
You can also customize a few things about the experience, like using different note highways, or hero powers that do things like clear up all the upcoming notes, or lessen the difficulty for a section of the song. But Hex, there's one part of GHTV that a lot of players won't like. You can't permanently purchase any songs.
No. You need to spend play tokens if you want to have a go at a specific song from the catalogue.
Okay. Use your coins to buy the highlighted pack.
These can be purchased with real money, or you can slowly gather them for free by leveling up your profile, which you do by playing the free channels.
I know it's quite easy to earn the free plays. I think I've got about 20 tokens just sitting there untouched. But I do think this will bother expert players who just want to practice one song over and over again and master it on the highest difficulty. They're going to burn through those plays pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just a different system that we're used to, but I actually think it's a pretty fair one. It's not like it's a chore to go and play some other songs for a while to earn more plays, and I think as long as they keep refreshing GHTV with new content, it'll be fine.
But Hex, what about a party situation when friends come over? I don't want to waste my plays on their stupid song choices.
What are you trying to say?
You have stupid song choices. My only option in that situation is to pay for a 24-hour party pass to make any personal selection free to play, and that's about $7.
You make a good point, and I do think the multiplayer is a bit weak. There is local and online play for 2 guitars, as well as the ability to sing along using a USB mic, but both guitars play the same part. There's no separate lead and rhythm parts or bass guitar. I mean, that's disappointing.
Yeah, it does feel like a bit of an afterthought. What are you going to give it, Hex?
Well, overall, I was seriously impressed with this. I think for anyone who was a little bit sick of the old Guitar Hero formula, this is a really modern reinvention. I'm giving it 4 stars.
Yeah, I wasn't quite on board with the Korean music, and I'm still uneasy about that freemium model, but it did need a reinvention. And you're right, they've done a really great job with it. It's good fun. I'm giving it 3.5 stars.
Here's what's making headlines. Activision has announced that the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 versions of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5 have been delayed. In a statement, the publisher said their resources were now fully focused on fixes and content updates for the PS4 and Xbox One versions of the game, which was critically savaged on its release due to various bugs and design choices. No new release date has been set for the last-gen versions. Former Activision owner Vivendi has purchased a 10.4% equity stake in Ubisoft for over 374 million Australian dollars. However, an internal email from Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot called the investment unsolicited and unwelcome, and has vowed to fight for Ubisoft to remain independent. Employees from Rock Band 4 developer Harmonix have been caught out posting 5-star reviews of their game on Amazon without mentioning they worked on it. After the reviews were brought to light by a user on Reddit, Harmonix were quick to release a statement saying they had now clarified their internal policy about posting reviews of their own products, and that the reviews must be either edited for transparency or removed. And that's all for this week.
Thanks, Goose. We looked at Halo 5's campaign last week, but now it is time to dive into some multiplayer mayhem.
Okay.
We look pretty awesome. Just so you know, I'm not going to hold back with the teabag.
Oh, now that's not nice. I'm a lady.
Don't you teabag me.
No, I'm just taking your railgun.
Yeah, we're doing this. We're doing this. Let's push forward. There's nowhere to run.
There's no way I'm surviving this. That was a dance with death. I could not win.
This time out, the multiplayer is actually split into two halves. On one side, you have the more traditional arena, which is full of your competitive 4v4 modes like Team Deathmatch and Capture the Flag.
You have the flag.
And on the other side, you have the brand new Warzone, which takes 24 players and mixes in a whole bunch of AI grunts and bosses to create a sort of FPS MOBA experience.
Teammates eliminated Baron Sarong.
But let's start with the arena, and in terms of new modes, there's the pretty standard Capture the Point mode Strongholds and Breakout, where everyone has 1 life per round, and the first team to win 5 rounds wins the game.
Enemy team facing elimination.
It definitely makes good teamwork and cautious play essential. I didn't like the look of the maps though. That whole futuristic paintball course style doesn't have much personality. But I did love how everyone man cannons into the arena at the start of the round.
Time to send them back to basic training.
Yeah, that was a nice touch, but I thought the arena maps were a tad forgettable. They're functionally fine and designed well, but they just needed a little bit more pizzazz.
Yeah, there's the Chinatown one and that one with a whale, but there's certainly nothing here that's going to rank in the greatest Halo maps of all time, which is a shame.
I see the whale! Oh, okay, don't look at the whale. Focus on... Okay. The whale's very distracting.
The closest we get to classic Halo quality design is probably the Midship remake. Maybe a few other remakes wouldn't have hurt.
Didn't seem like there are as many classic modes as I was expecting, with only Capture the Flag, SWAT, and Slayer available. So hopefully they'll add in things like Oddball and King of the Hill soon.
I didn't like how none of the arena maps were made for vehicles. They've completely removed those mid-sized 4 versus 4 maps with vehicles, like Zanzibar and Blood Gulch. Those maps were my favorites. I don't like change hex.
Well, I guess they wanted to keep the vehicles in Warzone and then make the arena a more pure competitive space. But it is a shame, isn't it? There's just no middle ground between the epic Warzone and small arena. But again, you know, maybe we'll see more of those modes drop in the future.
Yes, hopefully. But I will say they have done a great job of making the moment-to-moment action better than ever. Everything is so balanced now that they've removed armor abilities and loadouts, so everyone spawns with the exact same gear. Also, power weapons and abilities now have big countdown timers and markers for when and where they'll spawn in. So it's all about who plays better and who controls the map, and that's what Halo multiplayer should be.
And all the extra mobility options like mantling and thruster pack maneuvers add in more tactical options than ever and fit really well into the sandbox.
Yeah, such a speedier game now with all that stuff. And can I just mention again how great it is that this is running at 60 frames per second?
It's pretty good.
Oh, it's so good, Hex. It's silky smooth. Look, it's like butter in my eyes. Also, now there are multiplayer dedicated servers, and that's great to see. Let's talk about Warzone. Each match is basically a race to 1,000 points, which are earned through kills and controlling points. But throughout a match, AI bosses spawn, and they're worth loads of points and can completely turn the tide of battle. And if you can get your hands on all 3 control points, then you'll expose the enemy's core, which nets you an instant win if you can destroy it.
It's a great mode though, isn't it? The maps are big and exciting, and I love how everyone flies in on pelicans and pours out into their bases to clear them out at the start of the match.
Having that many Spartans running around with AI units feels really new and special, doesn't it? I love change.
As matches go on, you'll earn rec points, which lets you call in more powerful weapons and vehicles. So towards the end of a match, you often end up with a crazy amount of tanks and banshees all just battling it out.
It's definitely the most epic Halo multiplayer mode yet, but it does lead us to the big elephant in the room, or the micro elephant in the room. Halo 5 has microtransactions. Boo!
Boo! Actually, they're not that bad.
Boo! Boo! No, you're right. They're pretty inoffensive. Basically, you can cough up a few real-life dollars to buy requisition packs. These unlock stuff like cosmetic gear, as well as the weapons and vehicles you call in during Warzone matches. But you'll earn plenty of them for free, and you get a decent supply of in-game points to buy them with, so they're easier to get your hands on.
Yeah, but most importantly, they don't unbalance the game at all. Even if someone has spent heaps of money and has a stack of tanks, they still need to play well to earn enough points to deploy them.
And a portion of the money made from them goes into a new prize pool. And it's great when games have a way to feed into their esports community like that. Also, the developers have said that now that they have microtransactions, it's freed them up to give away maps for free in the future. So if that's the price we have to pay, then I guess I can live with that, and let's hope that those maps are good. But Hex, now that you've played Halo multiplayer, has it changed your score from last week?
Not really. It plays great, Arena is well balanced, and Warzone is a lot of chaotic fun.
My fallen comrades.
I just hope we see some medium-sized vehicle maps and modes make a return in the future. But as it is, it stays at 4 from me.
It's a bit of a shame there's no firefight or Spartan Ops or any other co-op modes outside of the campaign, but you know, this plays great and it all works, which gets a big tick, so I'm going to stick with 4 out of 5 as well.
Oh, that hurts. Oh, what do you do there?
My parting gift worked at last.
Well, it's that time of year again, Bajo, a new Assassin's Creed game for us to prowl around on rooftops in a never-ending quest to overthrow the Templars. This year we'll be free-falling into Victorian-era London. London!
Have a cup of tea.
I think it's best we leave.
What did you do?
It's hardly the time for questions.
I don't have enough bullets!
What's your buckle, boys?
Your Grandmaster will fall.
Hex, I know you've always been a huge fan of this series, much more than me.
Well, it's evolved into a complex relationship over the years. I love them and I hate them. And if ever a franchise has suffered from oversaturation, it's this one.
Yeah, there has been a lot of them, but much to my surprise, Hex, I found this particular Assassin's Creed game totally brilliant. In fact, it might be my favourite yet.
Well, after Unity's lackluster and somewhat broken launch last year, they've certainly had to redeem themselves. And look, however you feel about these games, there is something that happens when you're launched into a new historical setting. A new time, a new city, you can't help but be completely drawn into it all over again. Damn it, Ubisoft!
Victoria-era London has such appeal to me personally. The Industrial Revolution, the colourful language of the NPCs.
I may know a thing or two about that splendid fellow you're talking about.
What's this?
God's sake! Are you trying to blow the gaff?
For the first time, the city feels truly alive, not just some giant set piece built for you to parkour around. And I love the variety of the NPCs. There's even children running about, which is really rare for an open world game.
What is this place?
It's nice to meet you both at last.
Yeah, and it looks beautiful, doesn't it? Foggy pastel tones, stunning skylines, and while it's no Notre Dame, climbing Big Ben was a great moment.
Yeah, and there's just so much detail in these textures. Just look at these rooftops. Look at them. Great tiles. And the winding city streets look great. There's more frames and NPC animations too. And it runs really well on console with massive draw distances. I was so impressed, Hex. And London as a city is just so huge, and we've never seen it this vastly laid out in a game before.
Well, let's introduce the characters. That's right, characters plural. Because you take control of the extremely deadly Fry twins, Jacob and Evie.
Churning seas of London. It's just the way Father described.
We won't spend too much time on the story because you know the drill by now. There are pieces of Eden and Templars and they have gangs and you have to stop them.
Big move to finally give us a female playable character in a main Assassin's Creed game.
I know, and she's awesome.
I will come over there and give
Untie me and then we can parley, my lady.
I'm pressed for time. Tell me now.
But what's really cool about this is that you can switch between the two.
I really liked this because it helps drive and explain the story without too many side characters who aren't a part of the action.
Whitechapel is no longer in the hands of the Blighters.
Plus, it's a nice touch that their motivations are a little different. It's a good contrast.
London is waiting to be liberated. Forget Crawley.
Father would have wanted us to listen.
Father.
They were touted to have different approaches to combat too, with Evie being stealthier while Jacob prefers to get his hands dirty the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, but for the most part, I'd say they play fairly similarly, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. The only differentiation seems to be later on in the skill tree, which takes the form of a more traditional RPG now. Eventually, there are certain skills that are only available to Evie in the stealth column, and the same with certain combat abilities for Jacob.
Combat is definitely the best we've ever seen it. In the past, Hex, I've always loathed enemy encounters because they just felt a bit awkward and not very intuitive, but in this game, I actually looked forward to them. They're really fun. They're scrappy, but in a good way, with combos, deadly finishes, and guns, which I particularly enjoyed. And I had a great time recruiting a gang and rolling up for a throwdown.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a slow process in these games of evolving that combat. It's funny to think back to the awkward Renaissance swordplay of the earlier games, when what we have now is so swift and so deadly. Get a good combo going and it gets intense.
There's a great range of weapons too that make a real difference to how you play. I especially like the stuns of the brass knuckles.
That hidden sword cane thing is my favourite. Especially when playing with Evie, she's like a whirlwind of death with that thing. But I would argue now that the fighting feels so organic that it almost discourages stealth, which for a game about stealth assassinations isn't a great thing.
Yeah, but I think the game is better for it. And I found myself still choosing stealth in particular situations where I thought it would work best.
Me too. And I like that there are lady thugs now.
Follow me down the tracks.
Continuing this newfound equality, you'll murder men and women all over town.
Yeah, which raises an interesting point, because that kind of cavalier approach to mass murder is one of my few criticisms of this game. You kill a lot of people, like huge quantities of goons, and sometimes even policemen, who are just doing their job, and this is all in the first hour of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could argue that they're all corrupt and will kill you if you don't kill them, but it does get pretty confronting.
Yeah, and I think my biggest problem is they just seem like regular shady dudes. Sure, of course child labour is bad, and these guys aren't nice people. But does that give me a free pass for mass murder? Something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if it were easier to play this more passively, just knock people out and move on.
Yeah, like Batman.
Yes. Well, let's talk about some of the other features. Similar to Unity, stealth is no longer about blending or hiding in bushes, but a more traditional cover system. I really like this animation they do when they're going in and out of stealth mode.
It's totally ridiculous, though. I mean, how much more conspicuous do you look just running around with a hood over your head?
True, but I liked it anyway as a gamey device.
You can also get around the city in a horse and cart, which is great fun.
It literally is ye olde GTA. You just hijack vehicles and tear through the streets, destroying everything in your path.
Yeah, there's even a boost button, and you know what that means, Hex? It's time to pump ye olde nos.
Aye, Captain.
You're relentless.
I'm not a good carriage driver.
It's fun and arcadey though. The carriages have been nicely gamified to take loads of damage. Plus, apart from being a cool, speedy way to get around this enormous city, they've been incorporated well into the missions also. While you do have your standard Templar hunts and free the prisoners objectives,
Hush now. Don't worry.
you'll also be tasked with kidnapping targets and shoving them into a carriage to be sent off for interrogation or some particular kind of justice.
It adds a nice new dimension, doesn't it? Because you have to tactfully clear an area without spooking your target. But when it comes time for the kidnap, there can't be any enemy stragglers or you'll be interrupted and the whole operation goes bust.
Someone! This crazy woman is after me!
Let's talk about the new grapple.
You love a good grapple, don't you?
Oh yes. And I have to say, it's completely transformed the Assassin's Creed experience for me. It's not a completely free system, you can't grapple everything, but it's generally there when you need it. And ziplining in and out of fights is just so satisfying.
Yeah, I like that it creates new assassination opportunities too, because normally to air assassinate you need to be directly above the target, usually on a ledge. But now with the zipline you can create new aerial pathways to drop down from. Brilliant!
The animations are nicely detailed for slinging about too, and I like how you have to work a bit harder when ziplining upwards.
Yeah, and can we also talk about the fact that your assassin's hideout this time is a moving train? I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah, it's awesome. It literally just chugs around the city in a loop, so you can ride it to places you haven't travelled to yet and hop off whenever you feel like.
And what a great way to see the city and appreciate all of that wonderful detail. It's such an inspired idea, I loved it. From your train, you access missions and collect cash, and of course you can fast travel to it at any point, which is great.
Speaking of trains, I love all those big action set pieces. Those fights that take place on top of trains. Kicking people off train sets is my new favourite thing.
Yeah, not to mention the River Thames is a whole separate area of goons and corruption that needs to be conquered. Boats travel up and down the river, making for a kind of moving parkour situation and creating exciting chase scenarios. And I think it all plays into what you were saying earlier about the city feeling less like it was obviously designed for free running. And I think that is this game's greatest achievement, and it's owed greatly to those living river moments, and the fact that London's streets are so much wider to allow for horses and carriages. So to accommodate that, the fact that you can zipline your way around gives you so much more freedom and opportunity.
Yeah, you see far less of those obvious ramps and staged climbing areas. It just feels more real. And while I know that climbing to the top of towers and churches is a hallmark staple for these games, I personally find it such a relief that I can just zip to the top in a second now. This city is huge, and I do not have time to muck around. The controls keep improving with this series as well, although I did find after a while I started to get that right trigger hand cramp. You just have to hold that right trigger down so much. We should also mention that there's no multiplayer this time around. How do you feel about that, Hex? Do you miss it?
You know what, I do. And it wasn't until Unity's multiplayer was finally working that I actually started to really enjoy the co-op stuff, you know? Both of us running together across the Notre Dame, like that was really cool.
Yeah, that was really fun. I don't know, I don't really miss it that much though, to be honest. And I certainly don't miss the versus multiplayer modes that was in some of the other games because it just didn't really do anything for me. It's a bit of a one-time affair.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, you know, all in all, it does sound like you're enjoying this Assassin's Creed as much as I am. In fact, I'm just so happy to be sitting here loving an Assassin's Creed game again.
Yeah, I had a great time with this. In fact, I would put it in the top 3 greatest Assassin's Creed games ever, next to AC2 and Black Flag, of course. However, I do go through this same process every year, where I dread picking it up. Then when I do, I get all overwhelmed and inspired by the new setting and the features and I fall in love with it. Then I settle into this kind of hypnotic grinding groove and it all starts to feel the same anyway.
Yeah, and maybe it's because I haven't spent as many hours as you have in this franchise that I haven't quite hit that jaded point yet.
Probably, and I think that's a valid point to make. I mean, for newcomers, you will be blown away by this. For fans, this is one of the greatest Assassin's Creed games that I've ever played. This is one of the most vibrant and exciting cities I've ever been in. But am I gonna finish it? Probably not.
Oh, really? That's so unfortunate. I think the series has just hit its peak. They've finally perfected the formula and done away with a lot of the problematic and tedious elements. It's just so good now.
Well, I think for me it comes down to the repetitive nature of the missions. I still look at that enormous map with X amount of bounty missions and X amount of Templar hunts and lists of things to collect. And I honestly just feel exhausted. I mean, give me this incredible city, this open world to explore, but don't give me the same list of chores to complete, man.
Yeah, fair enough. What are you going to give it overall, Hex?
Well, in spite of my jaded disposition, this is still an amazing game, so I'm giving it 4.
I loved it. I'm giving it 4.5.
I was toying with this device and have noted down the formula for you. It's not perfect yet. By golly, it works.
Maybe a little too well.
So, did you name the game for this week? It was The Adventures of Tintin, The Secret of the Unicorn, the game. Released along with the film in 2011, it was basically a platformer with some flying, driving, and sword fighting thrown into the mix. Loosely based on the storyline of the film, it sees Tintin following a mystery after discovering a scroll hidden in a model ship that he picks up at a market. And it's our Name the Game this week because it featured the voice of Alec Newman, who played Jack in this week's Assassin's Creed Syndicate.
Next week on the show, we actually pump the NOS in Need for Speed.
We want to be free to do what we want to do. We want to be free to ride. We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. We want to have a good time.
And a big thank you to everyone who came out to see us at PAX over the weekend. It was great meeting all of you and we loved answering your questions.
Well, until next time, Bajo out.
Hex out.
Hex, I just need you to know that in Assassin's Creed Syndicate, I murdered a lot of horses.
No, that's awful.
It's the quickest way to take them down. Take down the whole carriage, one horse, flop.
Yeah, I mean, I did it a couple of times too, but I didn't enjoy it.